Okay, here we go. Well, we might as well start at the beginning. Well, let me make one thing clear. What I have to say about Art of Foto and what I've seen here and what I've seen in Russia is really my own view. It isn't, the things I have to say about my experiences here are not necessarily the aims and goals of the Art of Foto and Anton and the rest of his crew, Sasha and Yuri and Dasha. But I do have a certain take on it, and it starts like this. I mean, I sort of see that photography is in a bit of, in the world really, is in a bit of a crisis, an important crisis and a good crisis. Photographers are now in a position to really influence the course and trajectory of photography, and I'm very interested in the silver gelatin print, black and white photography. And when I saw what they were doing here, I became very interested and wanted to see it, to see exactly what they're doing. And I was very pleasantly surprised. In fact, I saw things here that I really didn't think would necessarily come together. I mean, here I see a very real dedication to black and white film, which I think is absolutely critical to the course of photography. I mean, I think that Alfred Stieglitz and his group, when they abandoned the secession movement, they began to understand something very fundamental about photography. And they're working on, in my view, here in St. Petersburg, in the Art of Foto gallery, they are working with those basic principles, testing them and pushing them into new and more modern, because already Stieglitz is modern, right? Especially when Strand comes. They are testing and pushing these things in a time that is sort of against the times. So I think it's very important. I see it as sort of a core of all the places I've been, really, a core of a renaissance in the kind of photography and the kinds of things that Stieglitz and a generation or two after him, Adams and Weston and Brett Weston were working on. I mean, take a look at well, first of all, have a good look at the gallery. I mean, it's so important, it seems to me. I mean, if you're going to want to make statements about what photography is and what it should be and what it can be, that you have a place to show it and to test it on the public, to test your own goals, I guess, and to improve it. So a key element to what they have here, in addition to a working area, is of course the gallery. They just had an exhibition here yesterday that was very well received, and you can see some of the photographs on the wall. The work shows, I think, a very strong influence of Ansel Adams, and a real effort to sort of start, I would say, where Adams left off. So maybe you could just take a quick look around the gallery, but it's a very important and central part, I think, of the studio and the effort here. I mean, this is the work product. It's a real test. It's a real effort to demonstrate new works. They also have a darkroom, which is obviously essential. I mean, the combination, you can't produce work without a very efficient darkroom. And what they've put together is probably one of the more advanced darkrooms that I've seen in a long time. Why don't we have a look? I mean, again, from my perspective, and I'm basically a contact printer. I mean, I really enjoy and celebrate the look of a contact print. I remember the first time I actually made my own contact print, I was really stunned by the possibilities of that kind of print, and it was easy for me to understand why Edward Weston was making only contact prints. But there's clearly a place for the enlargement, and they've discovered here, I think, a marvelous way to put enlargements together. I don't know a lot about the enlargers that they have. They're more sophisticated about them. When I say they, I mean Anton and Sasha and Yuri are more sophisticated about using the machines than me. But they have the real possibility here of working with relatively small negatives to very large negatives and making very convincing prints. I mean, they've come very close on a large scale to making prints that have at least many of the qualities of a contact print that I think are important. And they're doing them basically with LED lights. But they have the capacity to do 35 millimeter prints, the capacity to do 4x5, 5x7 prints, and then of course to do very large mural size prints with an adapted devere. The devere that they use, of course, is a very commonly known devere. It's a very functional, very solid enlarger, but they've also attached it to LED lights and other computer apparatus that makes it much easier for them to print. So they have a real capacity to make very strong and convincing prints in the darkroom. I mean, it's really as good as any darkroom I've ever seen. And what I like about it even more is that while it can have a certain commercial application, it is unquestionably dedicated to a more artistic approach, which I think is incredibly important. I mean, these guys have really put a lot of time, a lot of effort, a substantial amount of money in clarifying their vision, and I think doing an extremely good job of it. I mean, I've roamed around the world looking at people's dark rooms and trying to get an angle on photography myself. You know, I went through China, all over the United States, all over Europe, all over Berlin, Paris. Really, I don't see the cohesiveness of a movement. I haven't found a cohesive movement anywhere that is quite like what I've discovered here in Russia. I mean, I really think that there's a possibility here in St. Petersburg of a renaissance in black and white film photography. This is a very dedicated and enthusiastic group of people that reaches out into the community. They're a strong group, a sort of family-oriented group, actually, themselves, but they reach out to the community here that is increasingly becoming involved. There's a lot of enthusiastic, very dedicated photographers on the streets of St. Petersburg. I'm very surprised at what I've seen. And they know a tremendous amount about photography. They've read about the whole range of photographers, and they're trying very hard to approach it in new ways. So it's a very important project. I hope more people, I hope people will come here and use this facility, actually.